Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Will Selviz, who is a multi-dimensional designer. Will, thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks for having me, Jared.
It's really great to chat with you. I'm interested to hear about NFTs, creativity, kind of your creative process, different things like that. But before we get into that, let's just hear your background. Who are you? Where'd you come from? And how'd you end up in the Web3 space?
Yeah, I mean, a lot to uncover in that. But my name is Will Selviz. I'm originally from Venezuela. I grew up there until I was about 13 years old.
Mm.
Then my family moved to Kuwait, to the Middle East. I was there until 2013. So I was there for about 6 years, and I went
Mm.
to middle school, high school there. That's where I kind of found my niche within arts. But also coming from a family that's very scientific, engineer,
Mm-hmm.
um, based type mentality. I got also into the computer science, the math, the chemistry, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So in about 2013, I moved to Vancouver. Went to University of British Columbia for about 5 semesters, and realized it wasn't for me. The computer science program wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I was really into, growing up, I was really into all this technology. Like I was kind of like that kid that would, whenever something broke down, I was fixing it for the
Yeah.
family.
Okay.
But also, like in 2011, I was doing things with augmented reality when the first iPod had like an app that you could run it and do things with. I just
Oh,
didn't really
cool.
know where it was going to lead to, but I've
Yeah.
always had that kind of curiosity to do
Yeah.
things. Um, but I found that I wasn't really like scratching that creative itch, so I
Mm.
got into photography after getting into like again my background is in drawing and painting, got into photography, and eventually got into concert photography. So I did concert photography for about 6 years,
Mm.
and it was a pretty cool journey because I was pretty young at the time. I was like 19
Yeah.
when I got to Canada, just living here, essentially, you know, that kind of story of like how grandparents moved to a new country with like I don't know how much money in their pocket and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess I had like a little more privileged version of that
Right.
with
Right.
like your parents are paying for school, but at the end of the day, you're kind of like making networking with people and making things
Yeah.
make sense
Yeah.
as a 19-year-old. But photography facilitated that for me from the beginning. I kind
Mm.
of like started to build a network, meet people, shooting concerts, and all of a sudden I got flown out with to shoot with artists, like tour around the world. I got to do festivals like Coachella. I got to do festivals out here in BC like Shambhala.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. That was really cool.
Wow.
But the problem was that school was always there. So I was like in the middle of finals, like flying out to do festivals and stuff, and
Right.
I sort
So
of just
so glamorous.
yeah, just coming back and yeah, and red eye to take a final.
Right.
It's not very fun, but it was cool. I really liked it. So fast forward to 2016, I moved to Toronto to OCAD University, which is again a design school here in Canada. It's
Mm.
been there for over 100 years, and they have a program called Digital Futures. And when I applied to the program, it's pretty new. It was actually like the second cohort or the third
Mm-hmm.
cohort around that time. And the program specializes in taking entrepreneurship, like new media technologies and computer science or design, and merging all that into something that when I first got into that program, they're like, we don't know what your job titles will be when you graduate, but we know that, that's where things are headed.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of things with VR, AR, and just kind of like it felt like kind of like Iron Chef, where we had like design sprints and
Oh,
we had to
cool.
like figure things out in a
Yeah.
like a very fast paced environment. I was doing 3D on the side. I graduated into the pandemic, which was
Mm.
not fun. 2020 was pretty tough year for everyone, but especially people who were, I feel like, graduating at that time and were
Yeah.
sort of trying to secure a job in the market.
Yeah.
I remember like there was a job fair and I was like shaking hands almost on a job with someone, and then next day we went into lockdown, and it just I don't know if you heard about lockdowns in Toronto, but we had it a lot worse than the rest of I feel like the whole world.
It's like
Uh,
one day you're shaking hands with somebody, and then the next day they literally are fearful of even being near you.
Yeah, it's like you were like trying to recollect. Did I hear anyone cough that day? And
Yeah.
was I like whose touch did whose hands did I touch that
Yeah,
day?
exactly.
But yeah, funny enough, I going back to like 2015, 2016, I had started like a bit of a arts magazine. And again, it was a student run. I was really like eager to create a community when I was brand new to the country, and
Mm.
I kind of put together like friends that were interested in arts. So I started what's called, well, at the time it was called Rendered Magazine, RENDRD magazine. It wasn't really a magazine, it was an online blog.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to turn into a magazine, but being a broke student, you don't really have the funds to like print all these magazines and
Yeah.
sell them. Like the economics just made no sense.
Right.
But I ever had that passion for like documenting what was going on in the underground here, the underground scene here and
Yeah.
in the UK.
Yeah.
Um, so we had a lot of fun doing that.
Mm.
It just at the end of the day, people were like started getting to like the second, third year of school, and they had to pay bills, and
Yeah.
it wasn't really something concrete. So we sunset it, and fast forward like four years when I'm graduating university now, I said, hey, like I'll keep the name, but I'll turn it into 3D animation studio. So
Yeah.
that's the namesake, rendered, RENDRD. I can dive into that later, but point is, yeah, I just dedicated to doing 3D animation on my own. After that, I picked up clients like Nike, NBA, Microsoft, just to name a few. But yeah, like it just sort of just snowball into this.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like how you just say those names so casually, as if everybody just picks up the NBA and Nike as their client.
I was very lucky and fortunate, and obviously very thankful of all the opportunities that have
Yeah.
come from taking that leap. But yeah, like it was sort of like you know I came from the photography world, I came from the videography world, and all these things that were very production heavy. So the way that I sort of strategized that was, okay, well, I can do these things from home. And even like a year or two before the pandemic, I was like, well, if I can work from home, I'm happy with that. Like
Right.
that's kind of what I wanted to do. Little, little did I know that was going to turn into like my everyday.
Soon you wouldn't have the choice.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was good. It also made people's life a little easier in terms of like production wise. I could
Mm.
take a sneaker from Jordan Brand and 3D scan it and make an animation with it and so
Mm.
on. So that sort of like was new to them.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic also in a lot of ways like we'll touch a little bit on this, but like how it's fast tracked a lot of technologies like VR, AR,
Mm.
3D into people's vocabularies, whether it's through NFTs, whatever it is. But it just all of a sudden overnight, everyone knew what I was doing,
Yeah.
and it was less onboarding onto like, okay, this is what 3D animation is and what you can
Right.
use it for. So yeah, I think it was the best decision I could have made was to just go do my own thing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great. So you kind of mentioned NFTs. So maybe you want to um, bring us down the path of how you go from a multidimensional artist into the space of NFTs, and what does that actually mean for you?
yeah, that's a good question. So my first dive into NFTs was working with an artist. His name is Troy Boy. He's a UK DJ producer, amazing friend of mine that I've also met through shooting concerts.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was shooting concerts back in from like 2013 through 2018, he was one of the people that I just love working with and
Mm-hmm.
shooting around and doing all that. So when the pandemic hit, he actually was working on an album, and he said, "Hey, like I need visuals for this." He's stuck in quarantine in the UK. I'm stuck in quarantine in Toronto. So we started working on all this stuff. And that sort of turned into a big collection that turned into a music video, turned into all these like assets that we had in the span
Mm.
of like 5 months in lockdown. And all of a sudden they said, hey, like let's do a drop. We've been working for 5 years. Let's call it the 5 year drop for Rendered and Troy Boy.
Yeah.
Um, and we dropped it around the time of NFT. He was playing an after party at NFT NYC.
Mm.
So that was the first installment, or the first, I guess, yeah, during the like in-person event that happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, we dropped it during the after party, and we didn't know what we were doing.
Mm.
We were just very like trying it out, see, testing the waters, and
Yeah.
letting people know that that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, we sold it. It wasn't like a crazy amount of like it was good for the time and for what ETH was worth at the time. We were pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
But it was the first like taste of like, oh, cool, like we did this, we got it from off the ground, and now we can keep
Mm.
going. But to answer your question about like what it means to artists like myself and where I see it going, I feel like, um, I've always had a pretty deep connection with the people bring this up a lot, but it's the patronage model and the Renaissance period. In fact, like I don't know, going to Florence, I felt some sort of like connection.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but like just I don't know, just I just felt like that's the natural path of almost like human evolution, or how we, since there's so much automation happening right now with so many jobs being automated by technology and AI
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, I feel like us as humans are gonna inherently gonna move towards just satisfying that creativity or
Mm-hmm.
that inner child that we have.
Mm.
That's just like my way of seeing things. So seeing an economy or a model that's sort of favoring people being able to do that is, to me, is very exciting.
Mm.
And so seeing the patronage model, or seeing people like sort of like, even people who look up to like Kanye, that can go up to um, a brand like Gap and say, "Hey, I have this crazy idea, but put your money behind me and look at how much money will make you."
Yeah.
Seeing how that happens from an even more like decentralized or crowdsourced way feels like a crazy time to be alive.
Mm.
So that's what gets me excited. That's ignoring a lot of like the more scandalous or things that maybe needs to be ironed out before we can really
Sure.
be excited about it. But yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, we're early days in the technology, and there's lots of weird things happening out there,
exactly. Yeah,
as typically happens when something is new.
yeah.
And so, when you look at the process the creative process that you have as far as creating art, what does that look like? And maybe there's two different aspects of this. When you're the client of maybe Nike or the NBA, and maybe they want you to create an NFT collection in partnership with them, or when you're just doing this out of your own creativity and
Mhm.
your own initiation to create your own collection. What does that process look like, and does it differ?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky that the brands that I've worked with in the past 2 years, even before that, they sort of come to me with, "Hey, we have this product. Here's like 90% of what or even 95% of what I propose ends up getting approved."
Oh, great.
Just because they're coming to me with like, "Hey, we want to create with you, not like be our hands to make something."
Right.
So I really appreciate brands that are like that. In fact, I sort of learned over time that's what yields the best partnerships,
Yeah.
the best synergy with their
Hmm.
team. So I kind of focus my energy in finding those people. Obviously, there's jobs that require sort of, I don't even say like giving up your vision, but definitely aligning it more with what they already had in mind.
Right.
There's no ego in that, but um, I yeah, like at the end of the day, when I've made like my collaborations are very much I try to go in a path that's they're trusting me with the vision, and I deliver in a
Yeah.
way that it's taking all that they have in consideration, but giving a spin that maybe they didn't have in mind and
Yeah.
they're happy with. But
That's great.
one scenario that I can talk about specifically with the NFTs was during Art Basel. Is it? I always confuse it. Basil.
Basil.
Basil. There we go. There's one wrong way of saying it, and I always like it. Which one is it? Blue button. During Art Basel Miami. Again, the English is my second language. I should say English is. I learned English when I was 14 years old, so I get a pass.
Oh
Um,
man, you're killing it.
Thank you. So during Art Basel Miami, there was an NFT drop. It was put together by the Open Earth Foundation,
Hmm.
and they essentially do crowdfunding, or they source funds for marine preservation in different parts of the world. But this one
Mm.
specifically was for the Cocos Island out of Costa Rica.
Hmm.
I personally have a deep connection with the Caribbean, being
Hmm.
Afro-Caribbean myself
Hmm.
and being from Venezuela. So this was a good opportunity because it was a second installment, and I noticed that they had sort of shifted things to work in yeah, in like a more sustainable way,
Yeah.
especially specifically for this. So I created artwork that was again like marine themed,
Hmm.
that really took me back to my roots, and that was just really genuine, and ended up auctioning it to fundraise for them. The work was displayed throughout like I think like 4 or 5 events during Art Basel, so it was pretty cool.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was sort of like this open blank canvas that they
Right.
gave me to create work,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was pretty cool.
And when you do a project like that, are you financially incentivized to do that, or are you doing this out of the goodness of your heart?
Out of this, so this was an interesting one because I think if I lived in the States, I'll have like some sort of tax break,
Oh, right.
but I don't.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like I
You
just
just
did
did
it
it.
because yeah,
Yeah.
and they also did a really good job of like giving us PR, giving us
Right.
all this sort of like added bonus or benefits to like
Yeah.
make sure that we get the recognition for doing
Yeah.
that. Um, I think out of that, they also got me whitelisted into Super Rare, so I was pretty happy with that.
Oh, great.
So it's a pretty cool marketplace. But yeah, point is like I obviously did it because I believe in their vision and I see what they're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And I've been sort of like waiting for something that aligns with my ethos to
Mm.
do a drop with them.
Yeah.
But I do feel that maybe if I lived in the States, I would have gotten more of the benefits that
Right.
they had. But
How much value do you put on, as an artist, building your community,
yeah.
your fan base? How much value do you put on that, and where do you do that? Is that like
Hmm.
Instagram or Discord or Twitter? Or like, where does that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Funny enough, like, so I talked a little bit about the magazine and how I was
Mm-hmm.
working on that back then, and I feel like I still have a bit of like a burnout from like just doing grassroots like community building. Like I was like, so we were like, my community back then was in Discord
Yeah.
and also, sorry, in um and Reddit, and we were going like not just like the main threads, but like the subreddits.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, funny enough, there was like this trend happening, which was I don't know if you're familiar with vaporwave.
No.
Okay, so it's just sort of like very, very cynical, like 90s graphics aesthetic combined with like synthwave and like
Mm-hmm.
not nowadays it's sort of like evolved into like what's cyberpunk and those sort of
Okay.
like things. But in the 2014 to 2016, vaporwave was sort of like this aesthetic that people were like really drawn to for no reason, but it
Yeah.
was very much like this like nostalgia with like a nihilism. It's like
Mm.
very, very interesting. But point is, a lot of the things that we're doing were being shared in those subreddits, and we
Yeah.
didn't know why they were ended up there.
Yeah.
We got to interview a lot of folks, like DJs that were anonymous, that were making like this sort of music within this aesthetic. That also people were like, how are these people getting interviews with them?
Right.
So we managed to grow from zero to maybe like 5K in the span of a couple months,
Right.
which again at the time was wow crazy.
Yeah.
But it was only through I put $0 on it,
Right.
and to me it was a big like, oh cool, we can do this just by like sharing a grassroots
Right.
community and sharing
Yeah.
with people that we believe in. So that was like my experience, like kind of building community. Like I say this because I struggle with that a little bit because I moved around a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like my whole life.
Yeah.
So I never stayed in one place enough to like own a like a local community or
Right.
something like that. So I'm still making sense of what that means. That
Right.
specific question means to me.
Yeah.
But from an online perspective, it's always been like, yeah, like I said, like going to subreddits, finding like little pockets of people that resonate with what I like
Mm.
and what I'm into, and yeah, like in my social media, like on Instagram and things like that, it just ends up sort of snowballing from the PR and things
Yeah.
that I do. But I personally still feel a bit of a burnout from like the days that I was doing Render
Yeah.
Magazine, that I was doing like this like super grassroots, like crazy, like every day on the computer, to now being like, okay, I'm a little more hands off with my social media. I
Yeah.
eventually need to get back into it, but
Yeah.
it's just letting it do its thing. But yeah.
What do you see as someone who is maybe, if there was such thing as a Web3 native at this point in
Mm.
time, maybe you are an example of that.
Mm.
And what do you see the future of NFTs looking like,
Mhm.
from your perspective, for your generation, for your age group? What does this look like in the future for us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, like where we are right now, where we're standing today in 2022, feels like I was thinking about it today. We were actually talking about this not long ago. You know, when Apple opened the App Store and all the apps were like these, like I don't know, like beer drinking, like screen
Right,
simulator,
right,
or
right,
like
right.
the buzz cut, like the
Yeah.
machine, and like you know how the app people were paying 99 cents to just have something make a noise of you know a clipper or
Yeah, yeah,
something.
totally.
So don't get me wrong, there's amazing projects out there right now. But it does feel like there's that shake off period that needs to happen
Mm,
over time for a lot of people to feel excited about the space. I feel like it's happening already,
yeah,
and it's only the space moving so fast that this
yeah,
question, what I say today, might happen in the next day or two.
yeah,
All that to say, I'm very, very excited about like I said earlier, like models of supporting artists to do what they want to do full
yeah.
time, and we've seen that with obviously marketplaces and a lot of things that are happening, but more so, um, I mean, like I see people whose life have changed entirely from you know losing all they have, like I won't get into specific anecdotes or stories, but people who have maybe lost their home and they decided to create art and then they sold that art into and then made hundreds of thousands, if not more.
Yeah.
And it's through sort of building that community. I feel like I was there like early days of Cloud Space and Clubhouse, and I was sort of listening into a lot of these conversations, very like watching the space for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that kind of person who I like to like absorb everything and then make a decision.
Yeah.
I find that during those days and seeing the people who are also listening into conversations and seeing them where they are today, it's really exciting. Like to find this IRL URL connection between community.
Right.
I haven't seen that before.
Right.
I've seen that at festivals, music festivals. Sometimes they have that,
Mm-hmm.
but not to this global scale of
Yeah.
like, like people like sort of like, oh, I recognize you from that project or this
Right.
project. So that's something I really look forward to, like growing more, like this sort of like global connection. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're only getting bigger as a species and reproducing and getting more people in this
Right.
planet. So why not like find a way that, that brings us together?
Yeah.
Because we like similar things. But yeah.
That's great. I love that. That's great. Well, I really appreciate chatting with you. It's super helpful to hear your background. I mean, you have a fascinating background. You're a super talented artist. And it's great to hear, challenges around community building and what does the future of NFTs look like, and how does one go through the creative process to deal with clients or to create your own art. That's super interesting for us all to learn a little bit about. So I appreciate your being with me here today, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Jared, and yeah, all the best.
Thanks, man. Great.